Okay, so let's dive right into this story, because it's a truly wild one. A sitting US president getting into a full-blown feud with the Pope. Yeah, it's a tale of politics, theology, and one very viral image. And this is where the whole thing just exploded. This single AI-generated image popped up on the president's Truth Social account. It showed him in this, well, Christ-like pose. Now, it was deleted pretty fast, but you know how the internet works. The damage was done. It set off this global firestorm, and pretty much everyone was asking the same thing. What in the world is going on? The president's official explanation, well, it didn't really help. He claimed he just misunderstood the image, that he thought it showed him as a doctor or maybe a Red Cross worker. And look, it's pretty doubtful that even his biggest supporters really bought that one, but it was a clear signal, right? He was not backing down. But here's the thing, that image wasn't actually the start of the fight. It was a massive escalation for sure, but not the beginning. So how did we get to this point? To really get it, we've got to rewind a few weeks to see how this whole extraordinary conflict kicked off in the first place. So yeah, let's go back to the origin of this whole feud. It didn't start with a crazy AI picture. It started with an unpopular war in Iran, which then spiraled really fast into a war of words that had the entire world watching. Now, just look at this slide. This tale of the tape really lays out the incredible contrast between these two leaders. On one side, you have this unpopular, lame duck president who's stuck in a messy war and is facing all these questions about his stability. And on the other side, a pope with a lifetime appointment, sky-high approval ratings, and a global following of over 1 billion people. I mean, as a political matchup, it's just a staggering mismatch. And wow, this shows you just how quickly things caught fire. It starts with the Pope making a pretty standard diplomatic call for an off-ramp to the war. The president immediately hits back with this blistering social media post, basically treating the Pope like a political opponent. The Pope, from his plane, responds that he won't be intimidated. And then, the very next day, the Vice President of the United States jumps in with a direct warning to the Pope. In just 4 days, a diplomatic disagreement turned into a full-on theological crisis. And this is where the conflict really went off the rails. It moved beyond just politics and veered right into religious doctrine. The administration took the unbelievable step of publicly trying to correct the Pope on theology. And right here, you see the heart of it. Vice President J.D. Vance issues this stunning warning for the Pope to be careful. The U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops immediately fired back, clarifying that the Pope isn't just offering his opinions. He's preaching the gospel as the Vicar of Christ, Christ's representative on earth. It was a formal public smackdown of the vice president. This whole thing really boiled down to one core concept, just war theory. This has been a cornerstone of Catholic teaching for over 1,000 years. And the critics, including the Pope, were arguing that the administration's war in Iran completely failed the test, specifically the part where war has to be an absolute last resort against an active attacker. So this wasn't just a simple disagreement. It was basically an accusation of violating centuries of religious doctrine. Okay, so let's see how this all built, because this wasn't just some high-minded theological debate. This feud started doing serious political damage to the president. It was shaking the very foundations of his coalition. So you can imagine, people on Capitol Hill were starting to get really nervous. This one fight was somehow managing to tick off everybody. Catholic voters, a super important swing group, independents and women, where the president was already polling badly. Even international allies were siding against him. And that bizarre AI image, that actually caused a backlash among his own evangelical base. His coalition was cracking from all sides at once. So the crucial thing to remember is this fight with the Pope wasn't happening in a vacuum. It was the cherry on top of a really, really bad week of political losses for him. He picked a fight he couldn't win. His key ally in Europe got crushed in an election. The war in Iran was just dragging on. And all of it was fueling this growing story about his own stability. So you add all of this up, the war, the erratic comments, the fight with the Pope, and it all starts to merge into a much bigger, much more direct conversation in public about the president's actual fitness for office. Prominent journalists like Peter Baker at the New York Times started using language that was just incredibly blunt. Words like disjointed, profane, and deranged autocrat. I mean, that kind of language signals a whole new phase in how the media was willing to talk about the president's state of mind. And all this political turmoil was having very real consequences. On top of everything else, the war and the instability had driven U.S. consumer sentiment down to its lowest point in 74 years. The economic pain was real, and it was hitting everyday Americans right in their wallets. But despite the political damage, despite the terrible poll numbers, the standoff just continues. The president, whose only real speed is accelerate, refuses to apologize. Meanwhile, the Pope just stays calm, continues his tour of Africa, and keeps promoting his message of peace. And that leaves these deep political and religious divides wide open. And all of this leaves us with one final, really big question. When the lines between the political power of a president and the spiritual authority of a pope get this blurred, this publicly, and this aggressively, what are the lasting consequences? Not just for them, but for faith, for politics, and for the stability of an entire nation.